Carlos has been a long-time champion for pavement preservation. He's currently the executive director of the Utah Department of Transportation, and as I said, he is a long-time supporter of this area. He's got many accolades, and I can read his resume, but I think that Carlos can speak for himself, and I think that you'll enjoy what he has to say. So with that, please welcome Carlos Placeres.
Well, thank you, Larry, very much. I implored Larry to please don't read that resume. Well, how's everybody doing today? So you finished a great lunch. You're seated in a dark, relatively warm room. And so this is a perfect recipe for full attention. I understand that. I'm really honored and thankful to Larry for the invitation and to be on the stage here with friends that I've known a long time and friends that I see in the audience here. I want to particularly reach out to Butch Wylake here, Executive Director of the Federal Highway Administration, who he and I have shared the stage here for this National Center on Pavement Preservation several times in the past, and it's so good to have our partners from Federal Highways here today. I'm going to start off and I'm going to read some facts. Last night as I was coming in, I work with the team and we put together what I'm going to say, and then I start reading it on the flight out and I start fussing and things change. But I was reading a PowerPoint presentation that the Council of State Chambers, so the Chamber of Commerce in all of our states, of course there's associations for everything. In fact, I learned that there's actually an association of associations. So there's a great career for all of us as we finish our public service in associations. But the Council of State Chambers came out with, they surveyed almost all of the 50 states, and this is the information they have. 45% of the chambers rate their transportation infrastructure as poor or very poor. 76% say increasing funding is a top 5 priority or the number 1 priority as they work with their legislators. The primary goal of the chambers, 68% of them, their primary goal is a long-term sustainable transportation investment. And they want to do this by seeking acceptable user fee increases, so that direct relationship between the user and the amount they pay for the use after cost efficiencies. That's a really important point that I'm going to touch on here in a few minutes. And 38% that they're actually looking at sales tax and 10% gas tax. And so keep that in mind as I go through this presentation. And let me just say, if I'm good and I finish in 20 minutes or so, I'd love to have questions from the audience here. I think I was given 30 minutes before Larry said he was going to throw me off the stage. This very complicated graph was meant to maybe take us back a little bit. So who was in Duluth in 2002 at the maintenance annual meeting? Jim, Steve, 2 characters up here, Gary. That was, I wanted to bring that up because really the group of folks that were attending that meeting and a gentleman who's no longer with us, Jim Sorensen with Federal Highway Administration, spent a couple late evenings, went through probably a few bottles of Crown Royal, Steve, was it? Crown Royal. But we developed a resolution to create a technical service program. So AASHTO, the American Association of State Highway and Transportation Officials, has committee structure, as you know, and Paul is the chair of the, or vice chair of the Standing Committee of Highways. And under the Standing Committee of Highways, there's technical service programs. Most of the technical service programs AASHTO has are under that Standing Committee. And the idea behind the technical service programs are AASHTO members recognize the need, and what they wanted to do was to address that need by finding states that were willing to contribute. So basically, if you see value, you're going to put money into that program. And the Pavement Preservation Program resolution passed out of the Maintenance Subcommittee, went on to the Standing Committee of Highways, and then since it was a funding issue, it has to go to the Board of Directors, and it passed the Board of Directors. It is today one of the strongest technical service programs, and we measure that strength by the numbers of states that continue to contribute to the program. And it's evidenced here today by the participation, the amount of you that see value in that and are participating in that. Now I'm showing a couple other ones. So as soon as we started talking about pavement preservation, I was sitting next to Mal Curley. He was the chief engineer for Virginia at the time. And he said, well, what about bridge? He was the chair of the subcommittee on bridge. And so the bridge preservation program was created, and we also have a equipment preservation program as well. And I was really glad to hear the inclusion now of the emulsion? Yes, task force. And it really represents the credibility of this organization. I thought it would be good for you all to understand really where it came from, and the fact that it continues to have success is success breeds success. So that's that was how we created the technical service program, and I wanted us all to remember Jim Sorensen, who was passionate about preservation, because like everyone in this room here, he knew it was the right thing to do. Now, let me reset here, and I'm going to spend a few minutes. I have 2 slides, and I'm going to talk about Utah, but I believe it really talks about all of us. And so what I wanted to talk about is, why do departments of transportation exist? Why do city engineering departments exist, public works department? And we too often jump to the idea that it's about filling potholes, or it's about pushing snow, or it's about designing projects. That's not why we exist. That's how we do our jobs. We exist, and I believe you'll find this if you look back in history. Every transportation system was created to either grow an economy, improve a quality of life. And if we keep focused on the idea of what our transportation systems are meant to do and how they're a foundation for everything we do in life, you are actually changing the world in the work that you do. You are making that much of a difference. You are improving it community by community, city by city, state by state. And it's important that we all look to each other to make sure that we're all successful together. Now think about this. I had the chance to testify to Congress a little over a year ago. And the question was, should we have devolution? Should we devolve the federal program? And I very strongly said no. Now I did that. I have a senator who had actually made that proposal. And that's why they asked me to come, was basically to contradict my state senator. But I believe so strongly that the strength of this country is dependent on all states being successful. I said that my businesses in the state of Utah depend on Tennessee having good, smooth roadways, having congestion-free roadways. It's critical. So that's why, as you attend these meetings, look to help share what you do to help everyone be successful. It's so important, because this is about the future of the United States of America, the work that you're doing today, and it's that meaningful. Okay, I would assume that most of you in your organizations have very common goals. We have 3 goals. These are the things that we put our money to and we measure from. And that's going to be part of what I want to talk about here. I want to talk about the idea of measurement and the opportunity that we have here to do this. Now, I won't touch a lot on 0 fatalities. We list that as our first goal. It is what we say it's our most important goal that we find. We move towards a day where we have 0 fatalities on our roadways. Too many people are dying on our roadways every year, and it's just unacceptable, and we can get to 0. But this is not a safety conference, so I'm going to move quickly to the preserving infrastructure. Utah's a little state. We're just about 3 million residents. We're projected to double in the next 35 years. Almost 90% of our population is contained within a 100-mile area. We're considered the 8th most urbanized area in the country, which is just mind-boggling to me when you think of Utah. But 65% of our land is owned by the federal government. So we have wide expanses of incredibly rural, beautiful country, but we have a fairly dense urban area. We have a budget, Paul, of $1.3 billion for our state. I think you said 1.6? 1.8. Oh, okay, we'll catch you.
We're small compared to some of our neighbors.
But we're competitive. $38 billion our asset value. I think it's important for you to understand what the asset value is in your state, your city, your county. Because what I'm going to encourage you all to do is to, yes, continue to be an engineer, but talk like a business person. Talk from a business perspective. Because I believe you all passionately believe that if you had more money, you could do a better job and you can save more money. And so that's what I'm going to encourage you to do. So know what your asset value is. Of our $38 billion, $24 billion of that asset value, pavements. Concrete and asphalt. Think about that. That's a huge amount of asset value just in our pavements. Bridges make up $8 billion, and then all the other stuff, traffic signals, signs, make up the remainder. So by far and away, we have to make sure that we take care of our assets. And I'm here to tell you that I can say this and pass the red face test. We have sustainable transportation funding in the state of Utah. And I'll explain how we were able to do that. We can take care of what we have, and we have money to optimize our mobility as well. I'm not going to touch on the optimized mobility piece, but I'm going to tell you a little bit in 2 slides really how we did it. One, we knew what our asset value was, and we were always talking about this slide. Who has not seen this slide? Let's embarrass somebody. Every one of you guys preach this slide, right? Day in and day out. This is why you communicate why preservation's the right thing to do. A dollar investment will save many dollars down the road. And so when people ask me, why are you working on a good road and you're not working on that crappy road over there, I tell them. And I tell this story. This graph, and our folks that every year we put together a strategic plan, and basically it's my report card to the legislature, to the governor. Every year I say, I need that graphic. This is what I start my story with every legislator. I have 104 members of my board of directors in our legislature. I try to visit with each one of them, not in a committee, one-on-one, and go through this story of being a responsible steward of the public's money. Now I'm here to tell you, can any of you tell me what my currency is? Not the Utah guys. I think I see 2 Utah guys. They're not going to tell it. What do you think my currency is? Trust. Trust is my currency. That is the one thing that we all have in the public service. We have to earn trust. If we do not have trust, they will not give us the pot of gold to manage. That's stewardship responsibility. So every day we work, every project we do, we work to build up the big piggy bank of trust. And if you do one screw up, that's okay to mess up. It's bad to cover up. If you make a mistake, be the first to stand up and say, I made a mistake, I tried to do this, this is why I tried it, I thought it might work. Be the first to stand up. And you know what? That's okay. The only mistake that's a bad mistake is one that you didn't share and learn from. And that's a hard thing to do, isn't it? When you make a mistake, what's the first reaction? I'm not going to tell anyone. Maybe nobody will notice. There are no secrets in government. There are no secrets in government. Everything you do will be known either through yourself or others. It's best to tell your own story. You build your trust when you accept responsibility. And I think that's one of the messages I want you to take away here today. Okay. 2005, 2006, prices were increasing dramatically in Utah. I mean, we had 2 years in a row where our construction cost index were going up 20% a year. Fast growth. And what we realized back then is we did not have enough money to take care of what we had. We could not treat all roads the same. And so we made this decision to take every road that carried under 1,000 daily trips or under 100 trucks a day, and we peeled them off, and we called them level 2 roads. And what we did is we reacted to problems on them. We set aside $10 million a year. We went out there and we filled the potholes and we reacted to problems. But those roads were decaying. And we were very public about why we made this decision. We had a good asset management system. We were able to tell our story with data. And what we did is we went year after year, we explained we're taking care of those high volume roads, the higher speed roads, the ones that are more expensive to maintain. We're doing a good job on those, and we were able to show that we're going to keep those all in good condition. Now, we were also able to show, if you look at the graph on the right, what we could do with more money. And this was the data, this was the way we passed a 5-cent gas tax increase, year after year after year. Now, this took 7 years of telling this story. You had to align the politics. You know, you can't be in an election year when you do this thing. You have to align the politics, you have to gain champions. And this is what I told the Wall Street Journal. They called me up after the gas tax passed and they said, Utah's a red state. Why would a red state pass a gas tax increase? And I said, it's a conservative principle. It's a conservative principle to have a lower cost of ownership. We do not pass liabilities on to future generations. We want companies to come to Utah. And if companies are going to come to Utah, they're going to look to see what type of liability the state is building up. This was the story we gave over and over again. There was no projects picked. There's just this commitment that we are going to change the shape of these low-volume roads, and they are now proactively going to be maintained, and we're going to be able to basically say good roads cost less. So it's going to cost the public less to have a well-maintained transportation system. And I think it's so important that as transportation professionals, you be both the good engineers that you are, but you also be the business analytic people and the communicators, the evangelists about why this is the right thing to do. I don't care what agency you work in, whoever is sitting at that interface, I basically call myself an interpreter. I can kind of still understand what the engineers are saying. I probably pretend I know more that they're saying than I really do anymore. And I can kind of understand where politicians are coming from. And unfortunately, I spend more time on that side of the fence than on the engineering side, but I'm an interpreter. I'm the one who has to take incredibly complex thoughts and ideas and try to explain it in an elevator speech to our elected officials. And so think about how you can provide that type of information to those that are the interpreters in your organization. Or perhaps you want to become that interpreter someday. Think about how you are going to be able to take that expertise that you have and transform that into something that will make a difference, change the world. Now, we're at a really exciting time right now. I talked a little bit about what we did in Utah. And we have the opportunity now to tell this story on a national stage like we've never had before. Think back, it wasn't too many years ago when states hated being compared against each other. You know, TTI report would come out talking about dangerous intersections or anything that would compare us one against the other, and we pushed back. We pushed back because there's so many differences. We can't be compared to Tennessee. I can't be compared to Washington State because of blah, 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 blah. And the public would roll their eyes at us. They don't care about those details. They really don't. And so the days are past when we don't compare each other. We don't measure ourselves. We need to embrace the future. We need to jump into this idea of measuring everything that we do and making a very clear relationship between the inputs, the dollars, the people that we have applied, and the outputs, and why those outputs matter to people, not to engineers, but why do people care? And that's really the critical link, I believe, that we all need, the jump we need to make. And we're doing that now together with our friends at the Federal Highway Administration. That's why I'm so excited Congress has, with the FAST Act, has maintained what I consider to be the revolutionary changes contained within MAP 21. We are moving forward into an outcome-based program. We have for too long had a program that says basically you spend this amount of money on this type of activity, on this type of road. Who knows what happens? That's not the way it's going to be anymore. We're going to know, we're going to have more flexibility than we've ever had before. We're going to be able to spend money on the right activity at the right time on the right road, but we're going to be accountable for the outcomes. I am so excited about this future that we have. We're going to be able to tell our story like never before. And I believe that story is so compelling that preserving our infrastructure is going to become something that the nation cares about and moves up the ladder. So I really encourage you to think about how you're going to play your role in helping us be successful with the implementation of the FAST Act and MAP 21. There's a lot of work still to be done. It's very complicated. There's lots of reasons to find, or excuses out there to find reasons why it won't work. Be the person that finds a way to make it happen. Be the person that finds a way to say yes and to lead us towards success. Now, you go to a lot of conferences now, and I get a chance to attend a lot of conferences, and the subject du jour is autonomous vehicles or connected autonomous vehicles and the future of transportation. These are really exciting times that we're in, and I believe transportation is at an inflection point that we haven't seen since the horse and buggy transition to an automobile. It's that big a difference. But you're not hearing anyone talk about cars that are flying on top of the roadway. You're still talking about cars driving on pavements, driving over our bridges. None of this future that people are so anxiously awaiting can happen without you doing the work that you need to do. It's that important. So, I have one more slide, I promise. And then I'll see if you have any questions, if Larry allows that.
Absolutely.
Okay. I've really said all this. The call to action, the idea that we need all of us to implement the FAST Act MAP 21. The idea that we're not anymore working together as individual states, but we're working together to help every state be successful. And I know sometimes it's probably frustrating to be a pavement engineer or preservation engineer in a very large organization. And you're probably down there waving your arms saying, wait, we need to have a conversation. And the folks doing the capacity projects or talking about future technology are getting more attention. Part of that is because you've always done your job so damn well that they just know you're going to keep doing it. But it's incumbent on you to tell the story of why preservation matters. It matters to your city, your state, your country. It makes a difference, and it's the right thing to do. So thank you for your time here this afternoon, and I'd love to take questions on any subject that anyone might have. So, yeah, the question was, he thought the high volume road made sense. And, but at what time were you able to catch up on the high volume roads so you could spend money on the low volume roads? And how do the people in the low volume roads like this? I'm here to tell you the most important road to any individual is the road outside that leads from their home to wherever they're going. And so every road's important. And it was really difficult speaking with the folks in rural Utah about why we were not spending the money on their road. We made sure it was safe, but we were clearly not spending the money on those roads. Now, what turned the corner was that slide I showed you on this conversation, and the idea that it costs more to go from the bottom up than it does from the top down. And so we had this discussion on cost of ownership. And we're a very, very conservative state, and we don't like to spend the public's money unless we have to. We passed a gas tax increase. We went from 24.5 cents to 29.5 cents. We changed the gas tax so it's actually indexed, and it's indexed at the rack. So and it was amazing how this happened because just as we were doing this in 2015, the price of fuel started dropping. But it can't go down, the index, it can only go up. We have a floor of 40 cents a gallon. So we got an immediate 5-cent bump, and what you saw was our commitment to those low volume pavement conditions if we got that 5-cent bump in the gas tax. So we were not able to take money from the high volume roads to the low volume roads. All the gas tax increase was committed to these low volume roads. It was almost 2,000 centerline miles of road. So it was a big part of our system. So having the data, putting it in terms that matter to legislators in terms of how they are being responsible for the taxpayers' dollars. Over and over again, every year we generate an efficiency report. Every part of our agency is required to identify what efficiencies they implemented over the last year. We publish that efficiency report. I present it to the legislature every year. They have to know you've gone through pain and you've squeezed things as tight as you can before they're going to throw more money at you. And so it's a combination of talking from a business perspective, making a commitment with data of what you can achieve with increased revenues, and showing that you've already wrung the towel and created as much efficiencies as you can, and you're committed to keep doing that. Did that address your question? Great question. Anything else? The question was, we have a plan for every section of every road, we call it. And what did we do when we cut these? We called it cutting our left arm off, basically. And we weren't taking care of those roads in the proactive way that we wanted to. Basically, they're back on with the gas tax increase. But at that time, it was purely reactionary, and they were basically cut out of that. Our goal was going to be to try to get every 10 years, try to do some kind of a chip or something out there, but even that was really stretching us. With almost 2,000 centerline miles of road with $10 million, we were just dealing with safety issues. So, yeah, can I share the elevator speech on why we would need greater investment for transportation? Before you get to the elevator speech, you have to build a foundation. And I'll tell you, one of the most important places to build that foundation is with your Chamber of Commerce. And then being able to then take that type of facts and bring it up. The way I would try to address this on the gas tax increase is one of transparency and trust. And basically what I said is, you're going to know where every cent of the gas tax is, you're going to know how it was spent, and you're going to see the results. And that was basically the communication I would give to the legislators. And that's why I talk about trust and why transparency is so important. I call it following the dollars. But the public and the public less so, they need to know they can do it. It's complicated. They need to know they can follow the dollars, but the legislators, it's so incumbent when you answer a question, if you can go to, not a prepared presentation, but you can say, oh, let's look that up together, and in a legislative meeting, just start clicking at your website and say, oh, here's the information you asked. They really like knowing that the public's work is being done in the public. So long answer, but it was basically that they could follow the dollars. One more, Jim? Where? Oh, yes. Yes. So first was a comment, I think, supporting the idea of how important trust is and knowing that the money, if approved, would go to roads where you said it would go. And the second one was, that's terrible. Integration with complete streets, thank you. Let me just say one thing before I answer the second question, or the first question. Partnerships. I didn't use that word, but it is critical for the success. I talked about the chamber, but in Utah, we have one plan for the whole state. We have 4 MPOs, large rural area. Every one of us, we have one financial assumptions, we have one plan, and the motto is we speak as one voice. So I don't care if it's a city, county, state, MPO going to speak to our congressional delegation, we speak together as one voice, and that's very powerful. So partnerships with your MPOs, I believe, are critical. 2, complete streets, and have we been able to leverage basically the idea of maybe mobility type of improvements, where we do bike and ped projects or capacity adding projects with preservation? Absolutely, and where it's probably made the biggest difference for us is in our bridge program. We have been able to, on capacity projects, take and address some of our worst bridges. And to this day, we have our bridges are in fantastic condition right now. And so every time we go out and we don't just do a project to try to address one goal. Every project's a safety project. And if we have a chance, we're going to try to make sure we address preservation, capacity, and safety as well. So thank you very much for that question. Okay, well, you guys have a lot of work to do, and you don't need an interpreter here talking with you any longer. So thank you very much for the opportunity, and keep up the good work.